This is my presentation, Histories and Intercultural Communication. I'm Benjamin Buss, and in this presentation, I'm going to be talking about how cultural and familial histories affect intercultural communications. The first of these is culture. Now in the book, a piece is referenced by Francis Fitzgerald that talks about how cultural differences between the Americans and Vietnamese caused a difference in how each of those cultures viewed history. And this is one of the things that led to conflict in between those nations, which is known as the Vietnam War. And this is just an example of how cultural differences led to something pretty negative. And then the other of these is family. And family histories are not as grand of a scale as cultural, but family histories will change how maybe people or different families from different societies will communicate with each other, or how well, because some families have more valued cultures or traditions and pride, while others don't, or have a lack of culture and such, and this will cause a difference in communication styles, more so the farther apart you get on that scale. And then the main part of the book that I wanted to look at was the histories as stories section. In this section, Jean Beauregard spoke on escaping history, which what he meant by that was it was America's goal to be kind of the first country to escape history and start fresh, and everything was new and we were the first to do everything. But the reality of the matter was that we weren't even the first country to have that idea. And now another country that did have that idea has history. All of them that did do. And that was the paradox. So you cannot escape history. And what we find in this is that instead of escaping it, which is what we thought we were doing, we were just either ignoring or kind of suppressing history. And this led me to my connection, which is a quote that I was told growing up, and that is, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." George Santayana said this in The Life of Reason, published in 1905. My main connection to this is because when I was growing up, my dad would tell me this, and I would try to apply this to my life in a sense that when I would see my brother in trouble, I would say, okay, maybe I shouldn't do whatever he just did. And then as I grew up a little bit, I would apply it to other people. And then I would even apply it to maybe even a corporation. Since I want to own a company one day, I can see a corporation or a business do something wrong, and I'm thinking, well, when I own my own, I might not want to do something like that. And then our book shows us how we can do that on a much larger scale, which leads me to my example, which this is unfortunately a negative example, but Laura Bush Middle School is here. It's a middle school here in Lubbock, Texas. It's just south of town, actually. And it had an incident in which several students decided to start up a social media page that had a focus of degradation, and it was racially taunting the students of African American descent in the school. And this also translated into, just in the hallways, they would call the African American students names. And they even had an app on their phone that made a whipping sound, and they would play that when they walked by an African American student to symbolize that they were slaves and refer to a time of slavery, which this relates to both the quote and the paradox, because they seem to have forgotten their past, but it's related to the paradox because we were supposed to be the country without history, yet it's their own history that they've forgotten. If they knew history, they could have corrected this. And this is also an example of differences of family histories and cultural histories together, because one culture, the African Americans, takes this much more seriously apparently than the group of students did, and they have been punished to the full extent as much as the school could, I hear, and thankfully that's the end of that. But anyway, so the discussions for this presentation. The topic one, all right, the United States is a very young country in comparison to most others. how does this lack of history affect our understanding and relationships with other countries and cultures? And the second topic was focused more on my quote, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it, by George Santayana. And the question is, how can this quote be applied by societies and cultures really from around the world to make the world as a whole a better place? And you can just expand on that in any way you want to on both of those. And thank you.